guest today is all the way from Austin, Texas. He is a debater, a podcaster, an atheist activist, a magician, a snake handler, and our featured speaker on the 2019 cruise. So if you're thinking about the cruise, you could talk to Matt and he might be able to tell you how awesome it is to cruise with us. He is the past president of the atheist community of Austin. He was a longtime host on the Atheist Experience TV shows. He now creates content on atheist debates and The Line YouTube channel. He can tell you all about The Line, which is doing a lot of really great work, and I encourage you, if you haven't checked it out, to check it out. As a longtime friend of the Central Florida Freethought community, I am proud to say that Matt Dillahunty is here to come speak. Please welcome Matt.
Awesome. I wish I had a better talk. And you are? No. So, first of all, I've done this for 20 years, and you can look it up. I don't say this anywhere else. I'm unaware of any other group on the planet that is better in general, better attended, better run, better managed, and with more things for people to do and participate than CFFC. It's just a fact. And I'm pretty sure that if you asked any of my friends who are speakers that travel around to all these, you'll get the same answer from all of them if they've been here. Now, there's lots of other great communities, but this one genuinely is the best. And I say that knowing that we're going to record and post this. So all the rest of you, pick up your fucking game because you are outdone. How's everybody doing? For those of you, I was supposed to be here last year, and I was going to apologize. First of all, I know the beard is longer. I have not converted to Islam. Everything's fine. But I got really sick. I was actually in the airport listening to them. Passenger Dillahunty, your flight is leaving. And I was on the phone with David, and I was like, hey, I'm just not going to make it. So we rescheduled for this year. And when he asked me, he's like, what do you want to talk about? Hell, I don't know. I don't generally give my talks titles. I don't look for anything. I do something different at every one. And this idea had come up because not only have I hosted the Atheist Experience for years, but now I host the Sunday show on The Line. And on Wednesdays, I host a show called The Hang Up. That's my show. It's my therapy. I show up on Wednesday nights. I talk about whatever I want. A lot of times it's politics, especially in an election year like this one. Sometimes it might be one of my magician friends or something about snakes, but we still take calls about, Arden and I own Epic Loot Exotics. We work with 10 different species of snakes, 5 different species of reptiles, and some other stuff we breed and sell them. So if you're looking for snakes or anything, I got stickers and everything. But the whole issue was, because this show is called The Hang Up, which got named in part because I'm famous for hanging up on people that call in and are dipshits. And the other thing is, it made sense because what's my hang up today? What did I see on the news today that I'm kind of hung up on? What's been nagging me? Because my work month is every month I produce 4 videos for the Atheist Debates Project. And so I spend all month thinking about those possible videos, putting them together in my mind. And then I record them all in the last couple of days of the month and change shirts between so it looks like oh wait, we're recording this. I've never done that. But this issue of can you hang up on family? In the 20 years that I've been doing this, family issues are the ones that I get emailed about the most. I'm the only atheist in my neighborhood. No, you're not. I'm the only atheist in my area. No, you're not. I'm the only atheist in my family. You're probably not. It's just the rest of them think that too. So today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my background. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Matt. I'm a godless heathen who was going to be a preacher. And you're going to hear way more about my life than you probably thought you would be interested in. And also about some things that I've learned dealing with other people in this issue of finding your way out of religion, how it impacts you and how it impacts your family. Can you shut it down? If you're having conflicts with your family, can you actually hang up? Should you hang up? And yes, you can. Thanks for coming to the talk. So in addition to the weekly hang-up show, the best thing in the history of the world happened in March of 1969. I was born. Now, it's not the best thing for you guys. It's definitely the best thing for me. Coming into existence was wonderful. I don't remember it at all, but that's when I got family, and that means that's where everything started going great and wrong at the same time in just amazing ways. On my mom's side of the family, they were predominantly Catholic, which means they were loads of fun. They didn't really care about the church. They had parties, they drank, they played music. There was a deck of cards in my hand from the time I was born. There are decks of cards in my pocket at the moment. I loved doing magic from a very early age, but I also loved games and cards. That was the fun side of the family. And on my dad's side of the family, they were Southern Baptists although my grandfather ran moonshine for a little while back before he found Jesus, I think. And it was a different kind of fun. It wasn't like fun on one side and boring on the other. It was just not quite as the same kind of fun. And fun on my dad's side was him giving us a big thing of Morton's salt and telling us to run out in the backyard chasing the birds, because if you've got salt on the tail of the birds, that they couldn't fly and you'd be able to catch them. Which is nonsense, but boy, they had fun watching us run around chase birds with a big old thing of Morton salt. We have a bunch of home movies that my dad took on his Super 8, no audio, so there's narration over the top of him describing what's going on. And when we would go to Fin and Feather Resort in Arkansas for the family reunions, he's there telling us everybody there. I don't remember or know almost any of those people. But my brother put those videos together, and I actually go back and watch that DVD of those old home movies every 5 or 6 years, just because I don't remember it. And it's funny, the things I do remember, I now don't know if I remember them or if I remember watching the video of them or if I remember telling somebody about watching the video of them. Because the way our brains work, how do you know? We know we're flawed recollectors of the past. At the age of about 5, I walked down the aisle at a revival at Gashland Baptist Church in North Kansas City, or Gladstone, and accepted Jesus into my heart. My family had always been religious. I was in church from before I was born, and it just made sense. I remember aspects of it. I remember the church, I think, I could be wrong, but I think I remember blue carpet down the aisle there. There were also weddings and stuff there later on. And my mom has since told me that when I went down and accepted Jesus into my heart, they went to the pastor and had a talk with him about, is this real? Can a 5-year-old genuinely understand this? And to his credit, Brother Moody said, we don't know. You got to wait and see. And so they did. And I grew up incredibly active in the church, more so than my folks eventually. But I never heard that story about them interacting with the pastor and doubting whether or not I truly got saved at 5 until I was an atheist and we were having the conversation. And that's when it came up. So I wonder if my mom's memory is accurate or if she's making stuff up, but it's probably something true that happened. My mom was so dedicated to Jesus. She got saved because of my dad's brother, who was a medical missionary. And as soon as she became kind of an evangelical Christian, she immediately had this goal and mission to save all of the heathen Catholic members of her family because they're part of a cult. They are the Mary worshiping idolaters who don't know the true Jesus. And so there's actually on the home movies footage of her presenting everybody on her side of the family with Bibles one year for Christmas presents. I'd have been pissed. But they all got a copy of the Living Bible, and a number of them converted. Because if you don't care that much and you don't know that much about the church, and everybody's excited over in this other one, and your church is just, boring party and everything's in Latin, you don't speak Latin. Oh, sure, I'll accept Jesus. It changed the family. And generally speaking, it was changes for the better. And I grew up in that environment. I grew up where we were going to church Sunday night or Sunday morning. When I became a teenager, it increased. But all of my time was spent hanging out with family. Family was the most important thing. And it wasn't like drilled into me. Family is the most important. No, that's the way it was. My mom's side of the family, we would be there for Christmas Eve. We'd be at my dad's side of the family for Christmas Day. We worked that out. And there were card tournaments. Anybody play euchre? Of course you do. Yeah, the smart people do. The rest of you should look it up. We played euchre in our family in a tournament regularly. 50 people at somebody's house, card tables set up in every room, and we had trophies, and there's not a single person at that house who wasn't a relative. It was all 50 people. We're all this extended family to have those euchre tournaments. That's what family was. And when we weren't there, we'd be over having a pizza dinner on Sunday at Grandma Dillahunty's house. That's it. That was my life growing up. And as I became a teenager, we moved and I started attending a new church. And I was way more active in the church than my parents were. Sunday morning, Sunday night, Monday night was visitation. I forget if there was anything Tuesday. Wednesday night was a course of service. Thursday night, I think, was youth groups. And then Fridays and Saturdays would occasionally be mission trips where we would go out and help churches and everything else. And then I would end up at Camp Windermere in the Lake of the Ozarks, which is a Baptist church camp. Anybody seen Jesus Camp, the movie? It's exactly like that, but without the picture of Bush. We didn't stand around and pray over Reagan. That things weren't quite as weird then as they eventually got. But it was Sunday dinners, it was gatherings. And as I grew up, the people that I knew from church in my youth group were my absolute closest friends. And so everybody that I interacted with was family or church family. That's not a slight to all the other people that I knew who weren't family or church family. It's just the way it was. I was definitely more involved in church than my parents, but I'm not trying to give anybody the impression that I was super Christian, stick in the mud. You know, it's where my friends were. It was just normal to go hang out there. It wasn't even that it was about Jesus a good chunk of the time. It was, hey, Brent and Pat and I are going to go do stuff. And we just know each other from church. We weren't always doing church things. By the time I had graduated high school, I had had a little bit of alcohol, I'd had a little bit of sex, and I'd seen a little bit of pornography. So I wasn't, Bible thumping Matt. I was Bible thumping Matt sometimes, and other thumping Matt some other time. I don't know. But I still believed, and when I went in the Navy, I served 8.5 years in the Navy. Actually, went to boot camp here in Orlando back when they still had the boot camp facility here. And my dad's uncle was the mayor of Miramar and had a house in Avon Park. And so when we got out of boot camp, we went and hung out at his place. Avon Park, I guess, is like a retirement community. We didn't care. There were orange trees in the front yard and gators in the lake, and we could sit out there and drink and hang out, and that's all we wanted to do anyway. But when I went in the Navy, it was the first time truly kind of away from the sheltered upbringing. And I didn't know I was sheltered. I thought I was ready for the world. I've had a drink, I've had sex, I've seen some porn. There's nothing left out there to surprise me. Whew. I did magic tricks in the Navy, and this was my first realization that everybody wasn't like me, is I would spend ridiculous amounts of time practicing stuff. And I would do a card trick for somebody. And especially guys from, like a couple of my friends who were from Louisiana who'd grown up around voodoo, and some others, when I do the trick, they'd be like, ooh, hey, aren't you scared having that kind of demonic power running through you? And here I am, a fundamentalist Christian, and I'm like, no, there's no demons or nothing. Look, it's just a card trick. I just did this, and then I'd show them how the trick worked. And I kid you not, they'd look at me and go, that's not what you did a minute ago. Why the hell would I spend thousands of hours practicing to fool you if I got a demon that can do it for me? But it let me know that not everybody's like me. And there were a lot of other things that I learned in the Navy that I didn't even realize were changing my views about family and changing my views about the world. I was in during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And Don't Ask, Don't Tell did not, by the way, mean don't ask, don't tell. It meant don't tell. And don't get caught. And they couldn't technically ask you when you were entering into service. It didn't stop anybody from asking you afterwards most of the time. And I remember the incident that sticks out the most in my head. There was a gentleman who we all knew was gay. And he got a letter from his boyfriend, read it, stuffed it underneath his rack, and went to stand watch. Somebody saw it, knew what it was, went over and stole that letter out from underneath his rack, went up to the Master at Arms office and said, I found this on the ground in order to specifically out this individual. Now the individual who was being outed was genuinely one of the best guys in the division. Hard worker, decent person, somebody anybody would want. And this guy was potentially going to be a career military person. And hope nobody's offended by harsh language, because I will occasionally say things. This shithead who stole that letter, it's specifically to ruin this guy's life, ended up getting that guy kicked out of the Navy while he got to stay in and shouldn't have been. He was useless. Didn't do any work. I mean, it was another one of these, oh, I went in the Navy to avoid going to jail people. And it was very frustrating, but it broadened my mind to where there are problems that I might not be aware of. And as somebody who grew up with a father who's absolutely homophobic, not mean about it, but, you know, there ain't no sissy gay stuff around here, you know. It was wild to think that the people I'd heard things about and I had put into little boxes didn't actually fit in those boxes. We were wrong. I was taught wrong about people. And that was kind of eye-opening. It was really strange to be kicking good people out of the service while bad people stayed in, all because of a policy that I didn't understand. It didn't make any sense. Why do I care if he's gay? I don't know. I get called gay every week now, every single week. My partner is trans, wonderful, but of course that means all of the guys out there who are the gender critical jackasses are like, I remember my favorite comment, I posted a video and somebody just came in and goes, and the whole comment was, you're gay, homie. And I'm like, do you think for a second, now, I'm an outspoken atheist, LGBT advocate, my partner's trans, hosts a show on our network, it's not like any of this is hidden. Do you think if I was gay, I'd have any problem telling you I'm gay? I don't care if I'm gay, bi, pan, I don't give a shit. Use whatever label you want. But because of that attack, I'm sitting here with bucket loads of privilege, and because the person that I'm with is a target, I've become a bigger target. And so we had shirts made that said YGH for your gay homie and put it on coffee cup. I think it's hilarious. Yeah. Thank you for your comment. You just made me another $1,000. Come at me again. I moved to Austin after I got out. I did 8.5 years in the Navy. I was thinking about being a career. There were problems going into that. And so I ended up in Austin because a friend of mine worked for Dell and had an opportunity that I couldn't pass up. So we packed up, moved down there. Eventually I worked for Dell for 4 years, worked my way up to being lead engineer for workstation motherboard test. Did too good of a job. They didn't have any work for me to do for 6 months, so they let me go. I'm still pissed about that. But that's how I ended up an atheist. Because I had moved to Austin and focused on my career because I'm self-taught. I don't have a college degree. I just, when I want to learn how to do something, I just go learn how to do it. And I did the same thing with workstation motherboard testing, hardware tests, software tests, et cetera. And the years that I was at Dell, oh my gosh, it was awesome. First of all, we were making a lot of money. And Dell stock was going ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk. And it'd be like, it was not unusual for me to cash out $3,000 or $4,000 in stock and go hang out at the strip club for the weekend with my friends just for fun. Now, to be fair, I still drove a crappy car that was falling apart. So I was spending money in the right places. But that was all I focused on. I'm just going to build this career. I'm just going to get to where I can do this because I like doing it. And when they let me go, I was mad and I was done. I didn't understand because my dad, who spent all of his life working for the airlines, TWA, and then when they went bankrupt, American, and then when they went bankrupt, it was US Air, but now that's teamed with America. I don't know. He just retired not too long ago and took forever because he lost his retirement on 2 or 3 occasions. But he brought me up in the sense that if you work hard, if you have a good work ethic, if you are loyal to the company, that's a good thing. No, it's not. Companies don't give a shit about any of you, any of us. There is no loyalty in return. I used to laugh at the contractors that worked with us because they'd make all kinds of money, but I'd say, yeah, but you got to pay for your own health insurance and you don't have any job security. And they would just look at me and smile. And then I spent 4 out of 10 years unemployed. I worked for a year and a half, off for 8 to 10, 12 months, whatever. And that happened quite a bit and it's very frustrating. And there was a moment when I got laid off, I thought God was punishing me. I thought, because of the way my family had presented all this, God had wanted me to be a preacher. I did not want to be a preacher. I was terrified of public speaking, which is incredibly ironic now because you can't fucking shut me up. But I didn't want to do it. I wanted to marry my high school sweetheart. I wanted to go off and get a job. I wanted to not be around any of this stuff. Not because I was disappointed or had problems with my religion. I was terrified, genuinely, of being in front of people and talking about God and stuff. And the time that I spent thinking about that after I was let go by Dell is what led me to eventually recognizing that I'm an atheist. So when you think God's punishing you for focusing on something other than God, and you brought up the way I do, what do? You reach out to your family and you reach out to God. And I went to my uncle, who had been a medical missionary, and we had some conversations about, hey, my roommate's an atheist, because he was, and I want to figure out how to convince my roommate who's an atheist to join me in, being a Christian, believing Jesus. And my uncle was like, ask him where he gets his morality from. That's the easy. And I was like, ooh, wow, because I hadn't spent any time thinking about any of this. Now it's one of the silliest responses somebody could have given. It's embarrassing how bad some of the responses that fooled me and kept me believing were. And so I set out on a mission to figure out how to convince my atheist roommate to join me in Jesus. And that backfired spectacularly over the span of about a year and a half. And we were going to work one day and we were driving back home, and I looked over and I said, I think I'm kind of agnostic now. And he goes, cool, and just kept driving. And it was about a week later, I was like, oh, no, now I have I'm an atheist. Hi. And I got involved in local atheism. I got involved in the atheist community of Austin. I called into the show. Immediately thereafter, I was hosting a show. I called in, I think, December 2004 and started hosting in March 2005. And within a couple months, I was the president of the organization, the full-time host of the Atheist Experience. I was the librarian. I did a bunch of stuff. And I remember Jeff D and some others, who was one of our co-hosts and had been there before me, came up and he's like, hey, we love that you're here and you're doing great stuff, but you're doing a little too much. We're worried that you're going to burn out. Well, all those people are gone and I'm still here 20 years later, so don't lecture me on. No. It was a good thing to keep in mind. I don't know why I don't burn out the way some other people have. I'm probably somewhere on some spectrum somewhere where I just am doggedly focused on it. One of my last acts as a Christian that I remember, and sorry to the uncle that I haven't spoken to in years over this, but one of my uncles accused my mom of witchcraft. My mom has some particularly wild ideas about how God works and everything else. And when my grandfather was ill, my mom's view is like, this is from God. It's, kind of a punishment sort of thing. And that pissed off my uncle, who was like, what you're engaged in is witchcraft, not Christianity. So they started this fight. And I called and I lit into him as the good, dutiful son protecting his mom, as the proper representative of Christ. How dare you accuse my mom of witchcraft? That's what, the fact that you guys might disagree on how God works doesn't change the fact that she loves Jesus. You're the reason she loves Jesus. She'd still be playing football and banging cheerleaders if it weren't for her, which not that any of that's a bad thing. But yeah, I lit into him pretty good. And to his credit, he said, I understand if I was in your position, I'd do exactly the same thing, no bad blood or anything else. He'd stand up for his mom the same way I would. So the last thing I genuinely remember doing on behalf of Christianity is that I stopped believing shortly thereafter, and it caused me to want to interact with family less. Not because I loved my family any less, but because now I was absolutely the black sheep. I was absolutely the outsider. And when you're in that position, no matter how much they love you, no matter how much they may not know what's going on, you don't want to be there because you don't want to answer questions. You don't want to have the awkward conversations. You don't want to be the one sitting over in the corner at Christmas while everybody's talking about what wonderful work Jesus is doing in their church and how Satan's been coming after them and all this other stuff. And where are you going to church, Matt, now that you're in Austin? Oh, that church down the street. What's it called? The Yellow Rose? Oh, what a nice name for a church. Yeah, they got titties and beer. It's amazing. So you don't want anything beyond surface level conversations most of the time, and at least I didn't. I was already the host of the Atheist Experience at that point, and so every Sunday I was going live, taking calls. It's not like I was at all shy about having conversations about God. I just didn't want to do it with my parents and my family. It's they're in a different category. Family is different from random caller on the show. Everybody gets that. They're like, oh, I've watched Matt on the show and he yelled at somebody and hung up on them. Yep, many times. And cussed them out, called them names. I can be a prick and I can be incredibly patient. I try to be patient until I can't be and then get to the prick part. But the reality is that I always carved out a special place for my mom. I didn't want to disappoint my parents. I didn't want to rock the boat. I was worried that despite being 30-ish, they'd dismiss it as a phase, In the same way that as a parent, your babies are always your babies. For some reason, your parents are always this lofty thing right up until they fuck up and take that away. They have to take it away. You can't take it away from them. They have to take it away. And I didn't want to disappoint them. I didn't want to do look, I'm your dad, listen to me. Because that short circuits any actual conversation. And every conversation I knew we were going to have, and it turned out to be true because we had the conversation several times, was one way. Them preaching to me. I'm 55 today. I'd like to say that I'm done seeking their approval, but that would be a lie. They are weirdly proud of me and ashamed of me, which is fun. They're more proud that I'm happy and healthy and independent and not in prison and not the one that's causing all the other problems for the family. They are absolutely, I'm a responsible adult. I'm not an axe murderer. They don't have to worry or care about, my well-being anymore. I've been independent since I was 18. But when I say I'm not done seeking their approval, it doesn't bother me anymore when I don't get their approval, but it always makes me happier when I do. I'm at the point where a lack of approval is now a neutral expected, and actual approval is still like, ooh, I was a good boy. My friends from my youth group at First Baptist Church of Harvester in St. Charles, my brother set up a Facebook group just for all of us to stay in contact. And it's all those kids from 2 or 3 year period that were all in the youth group together. Most of them unfriended me the second they figured out who I was now and what I was doing. A couple of them are still there. Some of them cut me off. I had an interaction with another uncle who, when Googling his name, found me and my stuff and called me at work to basically try and use Pascal's wager to say, yeah, but if you're wrong, yeah, I know. My parents' reaction he actually threatened to out me to my parents if I didn't go tell them myself. So I am 30-something, and I've got a family member who's going to tattle on me if I don't go tell my parents Yes, I'm a godless heathen, and I do a weekly show where I engage in these conversations, and I'm working on a book to explain this to you, but my uncle decided to rush things. My parents' reaction was weird because they didn't necessarily know what atheist meant, and they didn't talk to me. Instead, they went and hunted down Lee Strobel at a lecture that he was giving and said, our 30-something-year-old son has just told us he's an atheist. What do we do? And Lee sold them his books. I met Lee Strobel many years later. I was doing a debate on the resurrection at Austin Baptist Church, and I think it was at Austin Baptist Church, and Lee Strobel was there, or was at some event. And I went up and told him this story, and I let him know, because Lee won't debate. Coward. Lee doesn't debate. That's fine. He's not really a coward. That's me just poking. But don't do that. There's only one right answer when a parent comes up and says, hey, our kid just told us this, what should we do about it? Talk to your kid. Don't talk to Lee Strobel. Don't talk to Kent Hovind, Kent Ham. Don't go to some apologist. Your preacher can maybe give you some advice on how you're going to deal with it personally, but when it comes to your relationship with your kid, everybody else should stay the hell out of it. You need to talk to your kid. My mom sent me a letter from a mother's love in an email that was really long. It was, your mom wouldn't lie to you, there is a God. Went through, and I decided, because we were not having good conversations, that I was going to treat this email as if it come from a random person, not my mom. So I went through it line by line. That's bullshit, that's bullshit, that's a fallacy, that's immoral, that's gross, this is false, boom, 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 boom. And click send without proofreading it or anything. And I was like, man, I just killed my relationship with my mom. And she wrote me back and she said, oh, honey, you're just like me, so logical. I had all those same problems, but Jesus fixed it. And I let her know, okay, then you need to go to Jesus and have him come to me and fix it. Because you telling me Jesus fixed it doesn't do anything for me. I still value and love my parents. My brother and I are thick as thieves. We don't agree on everything, and it couldn't matter any less. When I had my triple bypass surgery a couple years ago, Arden and I only been together for about 6 months. And let me tell you, Arden is just awesome. Best relationship of my life. Super, I mean, we're in business together, we work together, we live together. I talked to her twice today, I think. I don't know how people know how hard it is to start a relationship in June, move in October, and then have the person you just started a relationship with have to go in for a triple bypass in December over Christmas. Not that we didn't care about Christmas, but it's a big deal. And my brother came down to help. My brother is the best person on the planet. I ran the atheist community of Austin multiple times over a number of years. I'm no longer associated with them in any way. We'll just stick a period right there. I'm on the board for American Atheist. And throughout those years of interacting with an audience and getting emails, the most common things that were coming up were, I'm alone, I'm ostracized, I don't have friends, my family has kicked me out. Teenagers whose parents have thrown them out because they don't believe anymore. And it made me realize that whatever troubles I had with my family, including in 2016, a 6-hour-plus argument with my mom in her living room about Trump and the Bible and Christianity and everything. It was, I've talked about it before, no problem I ever had with my family comes close to what I hear about. There are people who've lost their homes, lost their parents, not to any illness, not to death, not to disease, just, we're done with you. Divorces, custody battles. How do I talk to my family about this? And that's what I'm asked all the time, and I am the beneficiary of mountains of privilege. That doesn't change the fact that these conversations with family can be incredibly difficult. So can you hang up on family? Sure. But you can also put them on hold. But that's not usually what people want. I'd still like to get their approval on occasion. I'd still like to have conversations that go beyond the weather or what repair I made on the truck or what new improvement I made on the house or what dad's doing now that he's retired. You know, something surface level conversations are the most that we end up having anymore. And I have a new understanding of family, which has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not we happen to be related by blood or adoption or on paper. Your family, when you act like family, Jen Peoples, my former host, taught me that statement. And it's incredibly true. Your family, if you act like family. And chosen family is, for me, far more important than somebody I might be related to by blood. The nice thing is, if you are related to somebody by blood, you can still choose them to be a part of that chosen family. But whether you're kin or family, you can definitely hang up on them. But should you? You got to figure out exactly when it's best to hang up, when to take a break. But you need to claim your space and tell them to call back another time. By the way, it's rarer, but not unheard of, that I get messages from parents who are godless heathens of some stripe and raise their kids to be decent secularists and humanists, and then something went dramatically wrong, and now their kids have found some religion or some cult somewhere, and it's causing strife, and they don't know what to do. And you know, they're kind of in this, oh, well, I guess I should just stay out of it. I'm going to love them forever. I need to make sure they know I'm going to love them, and it doesn't matter. I mean, you know, you can love Jesus all you want. Just, you know, please maybe don't vote that way quite as often. It'd be a little. Parents deal with this too, but predominantly it is younger kids finding their way out, teenagers, and then in college when they actually start discovering the world, or in the Navy as I did. That's what ends up causing the strife. You got to figure out when to actually block the number for good. Now, I block people on social media daily. I love it because I know how much it irritates them. And I know how absolutely little it irritates me. I don't remember who they are or why they were blocked. For a while, I would take screenshots if there was some conversation that was going to lead me to block somebody. I'd take screenshots, throw it in a folder, block them. And then if they ever emailed and said, I think you might have me blocked on Facebook. I don't understand why. I could send them back the screenshot. And then I was like, why would I do that? I blocked them. I'm not going to go back and dig through the past. Anybody who knows me knows that if I get angry for about 35 seconds, and then it's over. And I don't tend to hold a grudge, but I also don't just let things go. I've removed people from my life for being liars, abusers, users. I've hung up on them. I've kicked them out of my house. I block regularly, and I decline calls when they come in. I called my mom for Mother's Day because I still try to be a good son. That conversation was 1 minute and 24 seconds. I timed it. Now, I think it was mostly because they were at lunch. And she was just like, let you go. But you never know, because I haven't seen my mom in person since 2019. They live in Missouri. COVID happened, and that put a damper on some things, but it just hasn't worked out. And we don't really carry on conversations. We're not in a bad place, but we're not in a good place, and we never will be. There's nothing that's going to change there. I mean, she watches internet preachers, possibly thinks the earth is flat, has some views that are like, I don't even know how to get in and have those conversations. I also was a bit of a people pleaser. I wanted to do, I had to do and do and do, and I could never do enough. And I'm still that way a little bit. But now I only give 2 strikes instead of 3. And that caught a couple of people by surprise. They're like, this is only my 2nd strike. Sorry. You did what I just can't take anymore. But I have to think about, if the conversation only takes 1 minute and 24 seconds, is that my mom hanging up on me? Maybe. I don't know, because while she's my mother, the nature of the relationship isn't the same anymore. That 6-hour argument that we had about Trump in 2016 will never be repeated. My dad also forbid her to ever talk to me about religion, and I let him know that if I didn't already despise his religion, the fact that it allows him to forbid my mother to talk to me about anything, that would fucking do it. I don't know, I can't think of too many things more despicable to intentionally drive a wedge between a mother and child. I'm 55. When do I get to grow up? Don't tell me to act like a grown-up, because that's never going to happen. But when do I get to be out from underneath their thumb? Well, I am. I got birthday cards for my birthday from my family. One of them said that we're praying for God to stop you no matter what the cost. Happy birthday, hope you die. They weren't actually saying hope you die, but I know what they mean. And they mean if God needs to take me out to stop me from leading people to hell, they're okay with that. No hate like Christian love. It's wild to have people tell you they love you and say stuff like that. I don't recognize that as love. And it's not their fault. I'm not mad at them. I'm not mad at the preachers. They were indoctrinated just as much as I was. They were genuinely trying to, based on their beliefs, raise me up in the way that they thought was best, with the ideas and values that they thought was best. We just can't do that anymore. I told them after a couple birthday cards like this, don't send me anything else in the mail. Do not send me notes telling me what's going on. Do not send me birthday cards. If it's not important, don't send it to me in the mail, because every letter that comes from you in the mail will go into the trash unread for the rest of my life. If there's something important that you need me to see, feel free to call me. We still talk. I'm not cutting you out of my life. Feel free to call me. Let me know, hey, we're sending you this piece of paper and you need to sign it or whatever. Cool. I will keep an eye out for that. But anything that comes from their address goes immediately into the bin. So I half imagined that they just start sending me checks just to see if I would throw them away. And I was just going to stockpile them and cash them all at once and surprise them, but it didn't happen. The important thing to remember is that there's no right answer to whether or not you can hang up on family and how and where you draw the boundaries. Because my family experience, while I could sit here and tell anecdotes all day of what went wrong, still fine. Still better off than the overwhelming majority of people I hear from who are struggling with things. There are stories that I can't share, and I get to hear them, and I get to talk to people, but I don't get to tell their story. I don't get to tell too many details about the 17-year-old that we had to find a new home for, and the fact that this happened twice. I don't get to tell any of the details of the person who ended up in a court battle with their soon-to-be ex-wife, who had never cared about religion at all until they started getting divorced, and then used his atheism as an excuse to take full custody, deny him the right to see his kids. And I don't get to give those details because it's happened both directions at least 4 times that I've been emailed about. We're terrible to kids. The prohibitions against divorce that religion put up, I'm so glad that they're gone. I'm divorced. Beth and I still really good friends. We talk on the regular. She's happy, I'm happy. It was crap for a little bit there while we were, struggling through it, but we didn't even have any kids. Divorce is sometimes the absolute best option, and we need to just teach people that. How do we expect to build better families if we don't do the right thing for the ones that are fucked up and broken? Why do we punish people? Loretta Lynn wrote songs that were banned on country radio about divorce, about the pill. Critical ideas that needed to change so that we had a better understanding and so that we would treat our family members better. Why is it that I can euthanize one of my pets, but we don't have death with dignity for any of us? I want you, if my mind goes, you take me out behind the barn, shoot me, chuck the body in the woods. I don't give a damn, I'm dead. I don't want to be a burden to anybody else, but if there's somebody that wants to take care of me, cool. I will be there and I'll do what I can. Everybody's family is going to be a little bit different. You don't owe anybody any explanation for who you are, how you are, what you think, or any other aspect of your life. You don't owe them. You don't owe that to your friends. You don't owe that to relatives. You don't owe that to family, even the family you've chosen. You still get your own autonomy. You still get to be you. You still get to have sacred your mind. It doesn't belong to anybody else. It doesn't belong to any person, and it doesn't belong to any God. You don't owe anybody an argument. I'll do that. You don't owe anybody any of your time. You don't owe anybody any patience. You don't owe anybody any tolerance. But maybe you should be open to all of those things. Maybe granting a little patience, a little time, a little tolerance, a little argument, a little explanation, maybe those things can help repair damage in a relationship, because the key thing to the relationship is going to be communication. My brother and I are on great terms. There's nothing that's going to come between my brother except one thing, and it's never going to happen. And that is, anybody who becomes a toxic influence over mine and Arden's life can fuck off. I don't care if you're my mom. I don't care if you're an adopted family member. I don't care if you're a friend of 20 years. I don't care if you're my brother. If you're not going to work with me to make both of our lives better, I don't need you. If you're open to the time and the patience, people can change. Yeah, I know. It's probably not going to happen. My parents are not going to change. They've already flatly told me we are closed-minded. We are not willing to have these discussions. We will not consider this, and that's their prerogative. They can change, but don't ever expect it. Plan for the worst, hope for the best, work towards the best thing for your life, and where it coincides with the best thing for other people's lives, that's where family is built. There's a huge proponent, or a huge aspect of this that is tied to grief and loss, because the loss of a relationship happens when somebody dies, and when somebody ends a relationship and they're not dead, it's potentially worse because there's no closure. They're always out there hanging around. They could come back. They could knock on your door. They could call you on the phone. They could send you a letter and start all that crap up all over again. Or they might be showing up to say, I've had a change of heart. I thought about things. I treated you poorly. I apologize. I'd like to start over. And if that happens, you're the one that gets to decide if you're going to start over. Is it worth the risk? Do you know them well enough? Do they appear like they've changed? Have you changed? How much of it was actually your fault that you were putting on them? Can you have the conversations? Because we absolutely have to build communities. Now, I already mentioned at the top of this, CFFC, one of the best communities, if not the best community it is the best community that I know of, period, for godless folks. We need more landing places like this for the people finding their way out, or the people who've never been a part of religion, but never had a community because everybody else's community is centered around their church. If I'd stayed a Southern Baptist and moved here, I bet you, I don't know exactly where we are, but I bet if I threw a dart at a dartboard in a 10-mile radius, there's probably 3 Baptist churches near here. And this is a pretty fancy-ass place, so I might be wrong. But you need communities like this, organizations like Recovering from Religion. I don't know how many of you watched The Line, but over the last month, we at the Line Network did a fundraiser for Recovering from Religion. It was great. We raised $68,000 over the span of 8 or 9 days. Yes. Seth Andrews had drawn a picture of a cat. And I said that if we raised $40,000, I would get that cat tattooed on me. It's here on my ankle. I will show you, or on my calf. We were hoping for this. So I know you can't see it on the camera. You can't see it in the back. There's pictures online. It's great. I love the drawing. I love the tattoo. We showed it on the show, but we raised money for it. Recovering from religion is a starting point because they're not trying to convince anybody to give up their religion. They're trying to counsel people who are struggling with it or struggling with it after the fact, suffering from religious trauma syndrome. They can point them to seculartherapy.org, et cetera. But building communities is just like building relationships. It requires compromises. So good job to everybody on the board who understands that it requires compromises, because if you get a board that is entirely made up of people who agree, you're fucked. You just are. They need to agree on some stuff, but if you don't get some disagreement in there, and not on major things, you are really going to have a hard time. But compromise is key. I compromise with my parents. I treat my parents differently when we have the conversations, and that's my choice. And I get to end that compromise whenever it suits me. And the goal is for me to try to pick the right time and place to do that. I can hang up on family, but should I? And when should I? And is the answer different for each of you? Because all of your family situations are going to be different. Coming out as LGBTQIA+, gets a lot of focus. Coming out as a secularist, as a freethinker, as an atheist, as a humanist, is a similar issue. And I always recommend don't do the sit down, I've got something important to tell you. Just be yourself, and they're going to ask questions, and the questions are going to get more uncomfortable and then less uncomfortable as you just, no, I just don't think I believe that anymore. Why don't you pray for me? You don't even have to use the A word to start with. You'd be like, no, I'm an atheist, I'm done with it. It could be, yeah, I don't think I believe that anymore. You know, go ahead, pray for me. We'll see what God does. Give your family some time. You, in many cases, for those of you who found your way out of religion, you're the one who changed, and that means that you are the one who changed the nature of the relationship. That does not mean you are the one to blame. It doesn't mean there's anybody to blame. At some point, it'll become clear. You let them get used to it, you let them be awful for a little bit, you let them ask the difficult questions, whether you're coming out as queer or atheist or whatever. And at some point, it'll be clear to them that there's no progress that's not going to happen, that no progress will happen until there's acceptance and an improvement in the interactions. And you have to talk to people to let them know what your boundaries are, which means there's got to come a point where you're no longer continually hanging up on them if there's going to be an improvement. So hang up, put them on hold, let them call back. And if the conversation doesn't start with an apology and a recognition of past wrongs and openness to discussion, hang up on them again. Or if it does, and you're not quite ready for that conversation, and I do realize I'm using the phone as a metaphor. This all works in person too. I hope everybody got that. The pedantic boy in me is going, stop saying hang up, stop saying hang up. But feel free to hang up again. Feel free to say, hey, can we talk about this another time? I'd like to try to rebuild, because there's no right answer and your relationships are unique. March 31st, 1969 was the day my life started, and so it was the best day of my life up to that point. I have no idea when it's going to end. As far as I can tell, this is the one and only life I know I'm going to get. The soul is, in my opinion, the single most obviously dead concept in all of theology. It makes no sense at all. It's patently false, demonstrably false. What we know about the brain and identity and how everything's worked, there is no soul. Sorry, game over. I won't say there is no God, because I don't know that. I know there's no soul. I'm happy to do debates on that. So all you Christians who have been avoided doing this because you think that Matt just takes the easy side, I'll debate you. There's no soul. You're just wrong. But every second that I spend letting other people make my life worse subtracts from the amount of time that I have to enjoy the one and only life that I know I'm going to get. If there's an afterlife, it's a bonus. It's probably going to suck, given what I've been told. Heaven doesn't sound very fun to me, and hell doesn't sound very fun to me, and, you know, ooh, sucks to be me. I've had a triple bypass operation on my heart. Despite having many relatives that have lived to be over 100 and being in generally better health than I've been in 30 years, I have fewer days in front of me than behind me. And I want those days to be as good as they can be, and any negative, toxic influences in my life have to go. Time's up for that. Anyone that truly counts as family needs to understand that and needs to have a similar goal and be willing to work with me to make all of our lives better, or you just don't get to be family. And I hope that any of you who are struggling with family members find something useful in what I've said or what other people have said. Know that you're not alone. Have communities like Central Florida Freethought Community to interact with. Know that there are organizations out there like Recovering from Religion, Secular Therapy that can help. And that you find and build the best sort of family where nobody needs to be hung up on, but everyone is willing to do it when it's needed and understand that it is needed. Thank you.
I have a mic, and I will walk it around and people have questions.
Yeah, we'll take questions. I have one quick addendum, and that's this. I know that Phil already came up earlier and reminded you guys we need money. Or not we, I've already been paid. So if you did not like this, tough, I got paid. If you did not like this, go back and donate so they get somebody better next time. But the reality is, if you all just gave the $10 recommended thing, they're still not going to make any money off this. So buy t-shirts, do all that stuff so that they can get somebody better, or maybe have me back at some point if you did like it. But this community is amazing. You guys are incredibly lucky. And I hope you recognize it and keep supporting CFFC. Thanks.
Questions?
And now I will dodge your questions.
We'll start here in the front.
You mentioned your transition, but you didn't spend a lot of time on it.
Yeah.
When you grew up into this religious family and then you became an atheist, a non-believer. Can you spend a little more time on that transition time and how that went? Did you have some coming back into the religion because it's so comfortable and you felt good about it? How is the process? How was the process there?
Sure. Yeah, I skipped it because it didn't really have anything to do with family at the moment. But yeah, the short version of my transition out was trying to find the way to convince my atheist roommate to come back to Jesus, or come to Jesus. And as I did that and started looking into it, I wanted to find the best arguments to convince an atheist, which means I read a lot about what atheists said. I found folks like me now, and it became very obvious pretty quickly that I could no longer call myself a Christian, nor could I continue to believe the things that I was raised to believe. But I didn't just, I'm an atheist. It was, well, hang on. If that version of religion isn't true, is there some version that is? What kind of God might exist? And I joke that I started exploring other religions, starting with Buddhism, to find out if I would have multiple lifetimes to investigate this, because it's more than you can do in one. But I realized pretty quickly that the right place to focus was on philosophy and epistemology to figure out what's possible and how best to demonstrate it. And that, it wasn't long. It was about 1.5 years of really serious study and prayer and not getting a single answer from a God, not getting a single answer from a preacher that didn't turn out to be embarrassing after I spent, a couple hours looking into it. And this whole process of answering all my questions, preparing to answer my roommate's questions, which turns out never needed to happen, preparing to answer my mom's questions, all of that is what got me to where I can do 6 hours a show on Sunday taking calls and very rarely hear anything that's new or surprising, and very rarely be stuck without something to say or point out on it. So it was, if I hadn't been raised the way I described, and if I hadn't been a Southern Baptist, I couldn't do what I do today. And realizing that, and not being mad and bitter at parents and preachers and other stuff, it's just the circumstances. Like I said, you're not to blame, there's nothing to blame. But my process of finding my way out was absolutely one of trying to be the best Christian I could be and the best defender of the faith I could be. And what I found is that apologists are embarrassingly bad, pretty much across the board. So I have incredible job security because there's a lot of believers, and there will be until I'm dead. And I have a really easy job because the apologists are bad at it.
Thank you. I watched you on YouTube and online, and I had a question. Something you said at one point, a while in programs, that secular humanism can be considered a religion.
Yeah. It was founded as a religion. If you read the Secular Humanist Manifesto, the Secular Humanist Manifesto 1 identifies it as a religious identity. You don't have to view it that way. The Supreme Court's ruling, and Andrew Seidel, come to the cruise in 2026 and ask Andrew and Liz about this. See, I got you. Andrew and Liz are amazing, but the Supreme Court basically ruled that the protections that apply to religions would also apply to secular humanism in that religious sense. Not that it is a religion, but it has the status and protection of freedom of religion with the rest of it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Matt, thank you so much.
Thanks, Evan.
For coming. So, how do I phrase this? Your relationship with your parents, it sounds like, has not gotten better over time. Is that?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
There are aspects of it that are fine. Like, we'll never go back to what used to be normal, but there's a new normal, which is, we call and update each other. Dad's now retired, so he's got more time. My dad's my go-to my dad's like a mechanical genius, and changed jobs. He's not like philosophy book smart, ridiculously smart about everything else, and way more than he or anybody I know even recognizes. And so when I have questions about how something works or something should work, whether it be mechanical, electrical, he ran his own electric business, I call him. When I'm doing something on the truck, I like when I find out something that he didn't know. Anytime I learn something that Dad didn't know, I'm calling him to let him know, because he wants to know. But yeah, it's not the same relationship and never will be.
Okay. And that was really my question. Yeah. You've been going through this for the past 20 years. Is there anything that you would have done differently knowing what you know today?
Is there anything I would have done differently knowing what I'd done today? Probably not. This sounds like a little cliche, but I genuinely believe it. I don't have regrets about my life for the most part, because everything that I did, every mistake I made, everything that happened kind of led to who I am now. And I genuinely like who I am now. That's not always been the case. I hope I like who I am in a year or two even more than I do today. And in 10 years, I'll probably be fucking sickening and nobody will want to be around. That guy just loves himself. But it's genuinely just, I know that, trust me, I know the reputation that I have, and I know what people think they see on highlight clips from the show. I am a better person in every way than I was 5 years ago, and better than I was 20 years ago. And not just from like health standpoint. The only way I'm not better is I don't remember as many things as well. And my eyesight is getting worse and worse to where I have 2 pairs of glasses, one for my phone at this distance, one for the computer at that distance. Yes, I know I need to go get progressive lenses for all the people who want to tell me. But yeah, it's probably not going to get any better, and I've made my peace with that. And I think the thing I'm most grateful about, the thing I'm most grateful for is my brother. The one thing my parents absolutely did right is they raised 2 boys who absolutely love each other, stand by each other, and support each other. He's the best person I know, just genuinely. Don't tell him I said so, but he knows.
You talked about this atheist friend of yours that you constantly try to convert. You kept coming at it with arguments. And then you sort of leaped into being an atheist. What was that? What bridged that for you?
Yeah, so the goal was to find a way to convince Sean, my former roommate. We never had a conversation about it because I was off doing all this studying because Sean's a smart guy and had been an atheist since he was young. And we lived together for like 13, 14 years, so much so that one of his grandmothers thought we were gay and that I was his boyfriend. And she's like, if you come over for Christmas, you can bring your boyfriend. And he's like, boyfriend? What are you talking about, Grandma? I got a girlfriend. Well, who's that Matt guy? That's just my roommate. Okay. And then when the "you're gay homie" stuff started, I made another joke about it. But we actually had never even had any arguments or any serious discussions about it, because the process of figuring out what I needed to say to him already led me to catch up to where he'd been for 20 years. And so that's why I was like, yeah, on the drive to work, I was like, I think I'm kind of agnostic now. And he's like, yeah, cool. And that was it. Now he does his own stuff. We still live in Austin together, or we don't live together, but we're still in the same area. He's focused on, he's focused on his own stuff, but he's absolutely supportive of what I've done over the years. And we don't get to hang out as much, but yeah, we're still as brotherly friends as we always were. Or a little gay, I don't know.